Death Valley doesn't look dangerous at first. It looks empty, quiet, honest. That's what Hannah and Lucas thought when they drove in just after sunrise. Windows down, music low, a map folded on the dashboard like a promise. They weren't reckless. They weren't unprepared. They told people where they were going. They planned to be back before nightfall. And then nothing. No emergency call. No panic voicemail. No broken down car flagged from the road. Just silence, stretching hour by hour, mile by mile. When search teams finally retraced their route, they found signs that shouldn't have been there, and missing things that should have been impossible to lose. Tracks that ended without explanation. Decisions that didn't make sense. A final moment that felt less like panic and more like hesitation. People say Death Valley kills fast. But what happened to Hannah and Lucas didn't happen quickly. It happened quietly, deliberately, and only at the very end did the desert show what it had taken. Stay with me, because the truth doesn't appear until the last step of their journey. All right, Hannah woke before the alarm, the way she always did on travel days. Not because she was anxious, but because some part of her preferred to arrive at moments slightly before they announced themselves. The room was still dark, the air cool enough to make the sheets feel heavier than usual. She lay there for a few seconds, listening to the hum of the motel's air conditioner, to a distant truck on the highway, to Lucas breathing beside her. Slow, even, untroubled. Outside, Death Valley was waiting. Lucas stirred when she sat up, rubbing his face with the heel of his hand. Already? He murmured. She smiled in the dim. Sunrise is in 20 minutes. He groaned softly, but sat up anyway. They'd agreed no rushing today. No cutting corners. They weren't here to prove anything. This was supposed to be the quiet part of the trip. The place between destinations where nothing dramatic happened. A drive. A few stops. Photos. Back before dark. That had been the plan. The motel room smelled faintly of dust and old fabric softener. Hannah moved carefully, pulling on a light jacket, tying her hair back. Lucas stood by the window, pushing the curtain aside just enough to look out. The sky was beginning to pale, the black thinning into a flat, colorless gray. "It doesn't look real," he said. "Deserts never do," she replied. They ate granola bars standing by the sink, drank lukewarm coffee from paper cups. There was no tension between them, no argument, no unspoken weight. If anything, they were relaxed, lighter than they'd been in weeks. This trip had been an escape, planned carefully and slowly, built around days like this one. Hannah checked her phone. Full battery. Signal still present, though faint. She slipped it into her pocket anyway. Lucas folded the paper map, creasing along lines that had already been worn soft by previous use. "You ready?" he asked. She nodded. The parking lot was mostly empty. One other car, a faded sedan with a cracked windshield, sat angled across two spaces. The air outside felt different, dry in a way that stole moisture without asking. Hannah inhaled and felt it catch slightly in her throat. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but the heat was already there, waiting beneath the surface. Lucas unlocked the car. The sound echoed strangely in the open space. They drove out just as the first line of sunlight broke over the mountains. It spilled across the road ahead of them, pale and unhurried. The valley opened slowly, revealing itself in layers, rock, salt flats, distant ridges that seemed to shift as the light changed. For a while they didn't speak. The road was smooth, almost welcoming. Signs appeared regularly enough to feel reassuring. Mile markers, warnings about heat, advice that sounded more like suggestions than rules. Carry water, that's stay with your vehicle at cell service limited. Lucas pointed at one and grinned. They really want you to know you're not in charge out here. Hannah laughed. I appreciate the honesty. They passed a turnout and didn't stop. Another one appeared a few miles later. Still, they kept going. The valley was wide, deceptively calm. No movement. No sound beyond the tires on asphalt and the low hum of the engine. Time behaved strangely. Minutes felt longer, stretched in by the lack of landmarks. The same colors repeated, beige, rust, bone-white salt, until it was hard to tell how far they'd gone. Hannah checked the map. We're ahead of schedule. Lucas nodded. Good. Gives us room. Room for what? Neither of them said. They stopped once, briefly, to take photos. The heat hit them immediately when they stepped out of the car, stronger than expected, pressing against their skin like a physical thing. Hannah shaded her eyes, scanning the horizon. The land looked flat from a distance, but up close it revealed shallow dips, ridges, places where ground fell away without warning. Feels like standing inside an oven, Lucas said. Yeah, she replied. Let's not stay long. They climbed back in, grateful for the thin shield of air conditioning. The car felt smaller now, the windows framing a world that didn't seem interested in them. As they drove, Hannah noticed something odd, not alarming, just unfamiliar. The radio signal faded, returned briefly, then disappeared altogether. She reached to adjust the dial, then stopped. Let be, Lucas said. It's nice. She nodded. The quiet settled in. A little later, the road narrowed slightly. The pavement showed signs of wear, cracks filled with pale dust, edges softening into gravel. The map suggested a turn ahead. Lucas slowed, scanning for the sign. It was there, but smaller than expected. Easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. Is that it? Hannah asked. Lucas hesitated. He checked the map again, then the road ahead. Yeah, I think so. He turned. The change was subtle at first. The road became rougher, the surface uneven. The landscape shifted too, not dramatically, but enough to feel different. The valley seemed to close in slightly, the openness replaced by shallow walls of rock that caught and held the heat. They drove in silence again. After a few minutes, Hannah glanced back. The main road was no longer visible. Still good, she asked. Lucas nodded, though his grip on the wheel tightened just a little. Yeah, it reconnects. The car's temperature gauge flickered once, then settled. They passed another sign, this one older. Faded, harder to read. No services, no water, travel at own risk. Lucas exhaled slowly. Okay, Hannah echoed. Neither suggested turning around. It wasn't stubbornness. It was momentum. The quiet belief that as long as things were still moving, they were fine. The car ran smoothly. The road continued. The map showed a clear route. Nothing felt wrong. Yet, the sun climbed higher. The heat thickened. Shadows shrank until they nearly disappeared, leaving the world exposed and flat. Hannah rolled her window down an inch, then quickly rolled it back up. The air outside felt sharper now, harsher. How far to the next stop? She asked. Lucas checked, his brow furrowed. Closer than it looks. That was the first time either of them noticed how far looks could be misleading out here. They passed a marker that Hannah didn't recognize. Lucas slowed, squinting. He reached for the map again, unfolding it across his lap. Hold on, he said. The car rolled forward. Slower now. The engine's hum sounded different. Strained, maybe, or maybe she was imagining it. What is it? Hannah asked. Lucas didn't answer immediately. He traced a line on the map with his finger, then looked up at the road, then back down again. This is weird, he said finally. The word hung there, light but undeniable. Did we miss something? She asked. I don't think so. He shook his head. The road just doesn't line up. They sat in silence as the car idled, the heat pressing from all sides, patient and unbothered. Hannah glanced behind them again. The road curved, then vanished from view. It was the first time the valley felt less like a place and more like a question. Lucas put the car back into gear. Let's keep going a bit, he said, just to see. Hannah nodded, though a small, unfamiliar tightness settled in her chest. They drove on. Neither of them noticed a moment when the last easy option quietly disappeared behind them. For a while after that, things seemed to settle again. The road straightened slightly, smoothing into something closer to pavement than gravel. The car's temperature gauge held steady. The engine stopped sounding strained. Lucas loosened his grip on the wheel, just enough for Hannah to notice. See, he said lightly. False alarm. She nodded, though she didn't fully relax. Death Valley had a way of offering reassurance that felt temporary, like a pause rather than a promise. They drove another 10 minutes without speaking. The land opened again, wider now, flatter. The mountains pulled back, leaving a long stretch of pale earth that shimmered faintly in the distance. Heat rippled above the ground, bending the air until the horizon looked unstable, as if it couldn't quite decide where it belonged. Hannah checked her phone. No signal, she said. Lucas glanced at the screen. It said limited back there, too. I know. Just checking. She turned it face down in her lap. The device felt useless out here. Lightweight, smooth, suddenly fragile. Still, it comforted her to know it was there, even silent. They passed what looked like an old pull-off. No sign, no marker. Just a widened patch of dirt where other vehicles had once stopped. Tire tracks crisscrossed the ground, some fresh, some barely visible, softened by wind. Lucas slowed instinctively. "Want to stop?" he asked. Hannah considered it. The heat outside had grown heavier, pressing against the windows. She imagined stepping out again, the way the air had felt sharp and dry in her lungs. "Let's wait," she said. "There might be a better spot." He nodded and continued on. The map lay folded between them, open now to the section they were navigating. Hannah traced the route with her finger. According to the lines and symbols, they were exactly where they should be. That should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt strangely disconnected from what she saw through the windshield. "I don't remember it being this empty," she said. Lucas shrugged. "It's Death Valley." "I know. I just mean, even the emptiness feels empty." He smiled at that. "You're overthinking." Maybe she was. They talked then about small things. Where they'd eat once they got back. Whether they should skip the next stop and head straight out. A story Lucas told about a guy he'd met once who'd gotten lost in a national park and laughed about it afterward, like it had been nothing. "Everyone gets found eventually," he said. Hannah glanced at him. "Most people." He didn't correct her. Another 20 minutes passed. The road narrowed again, then widened, then narrowed once more. It forked unexpectedly. Two dirt paths splitting off in slightly different directions. Neither was marked. Lucas slowed to a stop. The silence felt thicker here. He studied the map, then the paths, then the map again. "That's not on here." Hannah leaned forward, peering through the windshield. Both paths looked equally worn, equally used, equally uncertain. "Which one?" she asked. Lucas exhaled slowly. "Left, I think." "You think?" He nodded. The map suggested curves that way. She didn't argue. She trusted him. He'd always been good with directions, patient with maps, careful about details. He put the car in gear and took the left path. For a few minutes, nothing changed. Then the ground grew rougher. The car bounced slightly, the suspension protesting. Lucas slowed, navigating around larger rocks. Hannah watched the underside of the car carefully, wincing when they scraped once, lightly, against something unseen. "That didn't sound great," she said. Lucas grimaced. "We're fine." They continued. A mile in, the temperature gauge flickered again. Lucas noticed this time. He tapped the dashboard lightly, as if that might settle it. The needle wavered, then returned to normal. "Probably the heat," he said, more to himself than to her. Hannah reached into the back seat and pulled out one of the water bottles. She twisted the cap and took a careful sip, then handed it to him. He drank, then passed it back. They had enough water, enough fuel, enough daylight, enough for now. Another sign appeared, half buried at the side of the road. The letters were sun-bleached, the metal warped slightly, like it had been bent and straightened more than once. "Road not maintained, no turnaround ahead." Lucas slowed again. "That's not ideal," he said. Hannah felt a flicker of something sharper than unease. "We should turn around." Lucas hesitated. He looked behind them, then ahead. The path behind looked narrower now, less distinct than it had before. "It should loop," he said, "according to this." He tapped the map again, harder this time. "Should," Hannah repeated. He met her eyes. "We're still okay." She nodded, though the tightness in her chest deepened. They drove on. Minutes stretched. The road grew worse, dissolving into loose gravel and sand in places. The car struggled slightly on inclines, the engine's hum growing louder, then softer, then louder again. The radio crackled suddenly, both of them startled. For a split second, static burst through the speakers, sharp and loud, before cutting out entirely. The silence afterward felt heavier than before. Hannah laughed, a short sound. That was weird. Lucas didn't smile. He reached for the radio, adjusted the dial. Nothing. Probably interference, he said. She watched the landscape slide by, trying to focus on something solid. A cluster of rocks. A distant ridge. Anything that suggested direction. The phone buzzed faintly in her lap. She froze. Lucas glanced over. What? She lifted the phone. The screen lit up briefly, then went dark again. I think I got something, she said. She unlocked it quickly. One bar of signal appeared, flickered, then vanished. No message? Lucas asked. She shook her head. It was there for a second. They sat in the idling car, both staring at the phone as if it might change its mind. It'll come back, Lucas said. We're just between towers. Hannah nodded, though she knew there were no towers here. They passed another fork. This one was easier. One path clearly less traveled, the other bearing deeper tire marks. Lucas took the more worn road, without comment. The heat had become oppressive now. Even inside the car it pressed in, the air conditioner working harder, struggling to keep up. Hannah loosened her jacket, wiped sweat from her palms. How much farther? She asked. Lucas checked the map again. His finger paused. That's odd, he said quietly. What? We should have seen the cutoff by now. A beat. Lucas. He looked up. His expression had shifted. Not panic, not fear, but concentration sharpened by concern. Maybe we missed it, he said. Then let's go back, Hannah said quickly. Lucas glanced behind him again. The road curved tightly now, blocking the view of where they'd come from. Let's just find a spot to turn around, he said. We'll backtrack. They drove on, slower now, scanning for a wider patch of ground. None appeared. The phone buzzed again. Hannah grabbed it this time. The screen lit up, showing a notification trying and failing to load. No, she whispered. Lucas leaned over. What does it say? I don't know. It won't open. The signal vanished again, leaving the screen blank. They sat in silence as the engine idled, heat radiating up from the road, the air inside growing stale. Okay, Lucas said finally. Let's not waste time. He turned the wheel, attempting a careful three-point turn. The tire sank slightly into the loose sand, spinning briefly before catching. Lucas. I've got it. The car lurched, then stalled. They both froze. Lucas tried the ignition again. The engine turned over, coughed, then caught. He exhaled sharply. See, he said. Still good. They completed the turn and began heading back the way they'd come. But after 10 minutes, Hannah frowned. This doesn't look right, she said. Lucas slowed. It should. The road ahead forked again. The same fork. Hannah stared at it. We already passed this. Lucas said nothing. He checked the map again, then the road, then the map. His jaw tightened. That's not possible, he said. The valley lay silent around them, unchanged, indifferent. The sun climbed higher. Hannah checked the time. They were supposed to be leaving by now. Instead, they were circling something they couldn't quite see. Lucas put the car in park. Okay, he said, forcing calm into his voice. We're not lost. We're just off the route. Hannah nodded. We can still get out. He reached for her hand. She squeezed back, grateful for the contact, for the proof of something solid and familiar. We've got water, he said. We've got daylight. We've got the car. She nodded again. The phone buzzed one last time. This time, a message came through. Half-loaded, fragmented, unreadable. Hannah stared at the screen. What does it say? Lucas asked. She shook her head slowly. I don't know. The signal disappeared completely. They sat there, the car idling, the valley stretched endlessly around them. Still alive. Still together. Still believing that this was just a difficult part before things corrected themselves. Neither of them realized that this was the last moment the situation still belonged to them. The engine idled longer than it should have. Lucas shut it off to save fuel, and the silence rushed in immediately. Thick, absolute, almost startling. Without the low hum of the car, the valley felt closer, like it had stepped forward when they weren't looking. "Okay," he said. "Let's breathe." Hannah nodded, though her breath felt shallow. She stared out the windshield, watching heat ripple across the ground. The air bent in strange ways, blurring the edges of things. Distance became unreliable. "How far do you think we are?" she asked. Lucas unfolded the map again, smoothing it carefully over his knees. He traced their supposed route, then paused. Traced it again. "We shouldn't be here," he said quietly. The words landed heavier than anything he'd said so far. Hannah leaned closer. "What do you mean, shouldn't?" "This section." He tapped the paper. "It doesn't loop like this. There's no reason we should have come back to the same fork. Unless we missed something," she offered. Lucas shook his head slowly. "Unless the map's wrong." That possibility settled in, cold and uncomfortable. Hannah reached for another water bottle. She drank more this time, the water warm but welcome. She handed one to Lucas, then another to herself, lining them up on the console, like a quiet inventory. "We should mark where we are," she said. "With what?" Lucas asked. She glanced around, then opened the glove compartment. Inside were old receipts, a flashlight, a folded emergency blanket. She pulled out the blanket and tore off a thin strip. When they stepped out of the car, the heat hit harder than before. It wasn't just hot, it was aggressive, pressing against her skin, drying her mouth instantly. Lucas tied the strip to a low bush near the road. The fabric fluttered weakly in the still air. "There," he said. "If we pass this again, we'll know." They got back in the car and started the engine. It hesitated for a half second before turning over. Hannah noticed. Lucas pretended not to. They drove slowly, eyes scanning the ground, the rocks, the edges of the road. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. The bush appeared again. The white strip fluttered. Hannah's stomach dropped. Lucas stopped the car. Neither of them spoke. "That's not," he started, then stopped. Hannah stared at the fabric, at the way it moved slightly, lazily, as if mocking the idea of direction. "We didn't turn," she said. "I know. We didn't miss anything. I know." Lucas shut the engine off again, rested his forehead briefly against the steering wheel. Just for a second. When he looked up, his face was composed, but something had shifted. "Okay," he said. "We're done driving." Hannah turned to him. "What?" "We're burning fuel and getting nowhere. The car's fine for now." "That's good. We stay with it." The advice sounded familiar, like something read on a sign or heard in a video. Logical. Safe. "You think someone will come?" she asked. Lucas nodded. "People come through here. Rangers. Other drivers." "But we haven't seen anyone," she said. "Yet," he replied. They sat there, windows cracked slightly, conserving air conditioning when they needed it, shutting it off when they didn't. Time became strange again, hard to measure without landmarks, without movement. Hannah checked her phone every few minutes, more out of habit than hope. Nothing. At some point, Lucas stepped out of the car again. He scanned the horizon, shading his eyes with his hand. The valley looked unchanged in every direction. "I'm going to walk a little," he said. Hannah's heart jumped. "Lucas." "Not far," he said quickly. "Just to higher ground. See if I can spot the main road." She hesitated, then nodded. "Take the flashlight." He smiled faintly. "It's noon." "Still," she said. He took it. She watched him walk away, his figure shrinking faster than expected, swallowed by distance. He climbed a small rise, then another, stopping to look around before moving again. Hannah stayed by the car, sitting on the hood now, legs dangling. The metal was hot beneath her, even through her jeans. She slid off and stood in the shade cast by the open door. Minutes passed. She kept her eyes on Lucas the entire time, counting his steps without realizing it. When he reached the second ridge, he stopped longer this time. She waved. He didn't wave back. A knot formed in her chest. Then he turned and started back toward her, his pace faster now. "What did you see?" she asked when he reached the car. Lucas shook his head. "Nothing. Nothing. No road. No movement. Just more valley." Hannah nodded slowly. "Okay." They rationed water without saying a word. Small sips. Long pauses between them. They shared snacks, though neither of them felt hungry. As the afternoon wore on, the heat intensified. The air inside the car grew stifling, even with the windows cracked. Hannah stepped out again, standing in a narrow strip of shade beside the vehicle. She noticed footprints then. Not theirs. A set of prints crossed the road a short distance ahead. Faint, partially erased by wind, but unmistakably human. "Lucas," she said softly. He followed her gaze. They stood there, staring at the prints. "They're old," Lucas said after a moment. "How old?" He shrugged. "Hard to tell." They followed the tracks a short way, careful not to disturb them. The prints led off the road and toward a cluster of rocks, then faded into nothing. "Someone walked out here," Hannah said, "and didn't come back," Lucas added. They returned to the car without speaking. As the sun began to lower, the light changed. Shadows stretched long again, reshaping the land. The valley looked different now, less flat, more angular. The ridges cast dark lines across the ground, creating patterns that hadn't been there before. Hannah wrapped the emergency blanket around her shoulders, not for warmth, but to block the sun. The reflective surface caught the light, sending flashes across the ground. "That might help," Lucas said, "if someone's flying over." "If," she echoed. He checked the fuel gauge. It was lower than she liked. "We'll run it for a few minutes every hour," he said, "just in case." Night came faster than she expected. The temperature dropped sharply, catching Hannah off guard. She pulled her jacket back on, then the blanket over it. Lucas sat beside her, their shoulders touching. The stars came out one by one, then all at once. The sky was impossibly clear, crowded with light. "It's beautiful," Hannah whispered. Lucas nodded. "Yeah." They took turns sleeping lightly, never fully drifting off. Every sound felt amplified. The shift of wind over rock, the creak of cooling metal, their own breathing. At one point, Hannah woke to the sound of the phone buzzing. She grabbed it instantly. The screen lit up, but there was no signal. No message. Just a glow, then darkness again. "Lucas," she whispered. He stirred. "What?" "I thought." She shook her head. "Nothing." Morning arrived quietly. The sun crept back over the ridges, bringing heat with it almost immediately. Hannah's throat felt dry despite the water she drank. Her lips cracked when she spoke. They checked their supplies again. "Still enough, for now. We'll walk farther today," Lucas said. "Early, before it gets too hot." Hannah nodded. Together, they left the car just after sunrise, carrying water, the flashlight, the emergency blanket. They marked the car with another strip of fabric, tying it to the antenna this time. They walked toward the ridges, careful, measured. The ground was uneven, deceptive. What looked close took much longer to reach. After an hour, Hannah slowed. "Lucas," she said. "Wait." He turned. She pointed. In the distance, something caught the light, a brief, sharp glint. "Is that metal?" she asked. Lucas squinted. "Maybe." Hope flared, small but undeniable. They changed direction, heading toward it. As they walked, the glint vanished. They kept going anyway. After another half hour, they reached the spot. There was nothing there. No metal, no object, just rock and dust and the quiet hum of the valley. Hannah felt something sink inside her. Not panic. Not yet. Just the slow erosion of certainty. Lucas looked around, scanning the horizon again. "We'll try another direction," he said. They turned back toward the car. But when they reached the rise where they expected to see it, it wasn't there. Hannah stopped short. "Lucas," she whispered. He stepped beside her, staring. The valley stretched empty in every direction. No car, no fabric strip, no reflection. Just the land, unchanged and silent. Lucas checked the GPS on his phone, though it hadn't worked in days. It spun uselessly, then froze. "That's not possible," he said. Hannah hugged her arms to her chest, feeling suddenly very small. "We didn't go far," she said. "We walked straight." Lucas scanned the ground, looking for their tracks. The wind had erased them. For the first time since entering the valley, the thoughts surfaced clearly and without disguise. They weren't just lost anymore. They were no longer where they had left themselves. And somewhere behind them, out of sight, out of reach, the last stable point of their journey was quietly slipping away. Hannah didn't cry when she realized the car was gone. She stood there, scanning the horizon again and again, as if looking harder might force the shape of it back into place. Her eyes traced the same lines repeatedly, ridge to flatland to shadow, refusing to accept the absence as final. Lucas said nothing at first. He crouched, running his hands through the dust where the road should have been, where the track should have led. There was nothing to follow. No evidence of movement. Just wind-softened ground, smooth and unmarked. "We walked straight," Hannah said quietly. Lucas nodded. "I know." His voice sounded steady, but his movements betrayed him. He kept standing, then crouching again, turning slowly in a full circle like he was trying to align himself with something invisible. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "It should be right there." The valley offered no response. They took stock again, slower this time. 2 water bottles left. 1 granola bar. The flashlight. The emergency blanket folded small now, its reflective surface dulled by dust. Hannah checked the time. Morning, but already warm. Too warm. "We should find shade," Lucas said. They walked toward a cluster of rocks nearby, moving carefully, conserving energy. The rocks cast narrow shadows, thin but precious. They sat close together, backs against stone, the heat radiating up from the ground even here. Hannah rested her head against the rock and closed her eyes for just a moment. Images surfaced immediately, unwanted, sharp. The motel room that morning, the radio crackle, the fork in the road. "Don't do that," Lucas said gently. She opened her eyes. "Do what?" "Go backward," he said. "It doesn't help." She nodded. He was right. The past offered no direction anymore. They stayed there until the sun climbed higher, the shadows shrinking until they were forced back into the open. Each step felt heavier now, the ground subtly resisting them. Hannah noticed then how quiet everything was. Not peaceful quiet. Empty quiet. No birds. No insects. No movement beyond the slow shift of heat in the air. Even the wind seemed reluctant, moving only when necessary. "People talk about deserts like they're alive," she said. "But this feels indifferent." Lucas glanced at her. Worse. They walked again, choosing a direction based on nothing more than instinct. The land looked the same in every direction, but they had to choose something. Time stretched then. Their conversations became shorter, less frequent. Hannah found herself thinking about small, irrelevant things, the taste of coffee, the weight of a blanket at night, the sound of traffic. Her mind grasped at familiarity, like it was afraid of drifting too far. Lucas stumbled once, catching himself quickly. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said, though he paused longer than necessary before continuing. The heat was relentless now. It pressed down from above and rose from below, trapping them between it. Hannah's mouth felt dry no matter how little she spoke. Her tongue felt thick, her thoughts slower. They stopped again, sitting on the ground this time. Hannah poured the last of the water into the bottle cap and passed it to Lucas. "You first," she said. He hesitated, then shook his head. "You." They stared at each other for a long moment, neither willing to move. Finally, Lucas took it and drank half, then handed it back. Hannah drank the rest. They didn't comment on it. As the afternoon wore on, Hannah noticed something unsettling, not in the valley, but in herself. Her sense of distance was slipping. Things that looked close took forever to reach. Things that looked far sometimes appeared suddenly at her side. She blinked hard, trying to clear her vision. "Lucas," she said, "do you feel off?" He nodded immediately. "Yeah." They slowed further, stopping often. At one point, Hannah could have sworn she saw a movement on the horizon, dark shapes shifting just at the edge of sight. She stopped, pointing. "There," she said. Lucas followed her gaze. "I don't see anything," he said. She squinted. The shapes dissolved into heat shimmer. "Never mind," she murmured. They walked on. Later, Lucas stopped abruptly. "Do you hear that?" he asked. Hannah listened. "Nothing." "No," she said. He frowned, turning slowly, head tilted. "I thought I heard the engine." Her heart jumped. "What engine?" "Like a car," he said. "Distant." She strained to listen, hope surging painfully. There was nothing. Lucas rubbed his temples. "Maybe I imagined it." The word echoed uncomfortably. They rested again as the sun began its slow descent. The light softened, but the heat lingered stubbornly. Hannah wrapped the emergency blanket around herself, its reflective surface catching the sun and making her squint. "That's not helping," Lucas said. She lowered it. As evening approached, something else shifted, not in the environment, but between them. The unspoken weight of responsibility began to press harder. "This is my fault," Lucas said suddenly. Hannah turned to him. "No, I chose to turn," he said. "I should have turned back." "We both agreed," she replied. "But I was driving." She shook her head. "Stop." He looked at her, eyes rimmed red, exhaustion carving lines into his face. "I need to say it," he said. In case what?" "In case this doesn't," he stopped. The silence stretched again, heavy with what neither of them wanted to name. Hannah reached for his hand, squeezing it firmly. "We're still here," she said. "That counts." He nodded, though his gaze drifted away, unfocused. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Hannah shivered, pulling closer to Lucas. They sat back to back, conserving warmth, watching the sky darken. The stars returned, bright and numerous, almost overwhelming. The valley looked different at night, less vast, more enclosed. The darkness pressed in where the heat had been. Hannah dozed fitfully, waking often, disoriented. At one point, she was certain she heard voices, low, distant, just beyond understanding. She sat up quickly. "Lucas," she whispered. He stirred. "What?" "I thought I heard something." He listened, then shook his head. "Just the wind." But there was no wind. Morning came again. Hannah woke with a pounding headache. Her limbs felt heavy, her thoughts sluggish. She sat up slowly, blinking against the light. Lucas was already awake, staring out at the valley. "We need to move," he said, "before it gets hot." She nodded, though the idea of walking felt daunting. They stood, stretched stiff muscles, and began again. After only a short distance, Hannah slowed. "Lucas," she said softly. "What?" "I feel like we've been here before." He turned slowly, scanning the area. "That's impossible." She gestured weakly. "The rocks. That shape." Lucas looked closer. His expression tightened. It was the same cluster of rocks they'd sheltered under the day before. "How?" he began, then stopped. They stood there, breathing shallowly, the realization settling in. They weren't moving forward. They were circling, or worse, being gently returned. Hannah felt a wave of panic rise, sharp and sudden. She forced it down, focusing on her breath. "We need a plan," she said. Lucas nodded. "Straight line," he said. "No turns. No adjustments." They picked a distant peak and walked toward it, eyes fixed, refusing to look away. Time passed. The peak did not grow closer. Hannah's thoughts began to blur at the edges. Words fell harder to form. She stumbled again, nearly falling. Lucas caught her. "Okay," he said firmly. "We stop." They sat together on the ground, backs against each other, the valley stretching endlessly around them. Hannah closed her eyes, fighting the urge to sleep. When she opened them again, the light had changed. She blinked. "Lucas," she whispered. He didn't respond immediately. "Lucas." He turned slowly, his expression distant. "Did you say something?" he asked. Her heart clenched. The valley remained silent, unchanged. And somewhere inside that silence, the first true fracture had formed, not in the land, but in the fragile map of their minds, already beginning to lose its edges. The heat arrived earlier than it should have. Hannah noticed it before the sun fully cleared the horizon, a creeping warmth that settled into her skin like something already familiar. She sat up slowly, head pounding, tongue thick, her thoughts lagging a step behind her movements. Lucas was awake again. He always was now. "How long did I sleep?" she asked. He hesitated. "Not long." She searched his face, trying to read what he wasn't saying. His eyes were bloodshot. His expression tightened into something careful. "We should stay put today," he said. "At least until evening." Hannah nodded. The idea of walking felt impossible. They rationed the last of food, half a granola bar each. Hannah chewed slowly, forcing it down, though her stomach resisted. Lucas drank the final mouthful of water, then wiped the bottle clean with the sleeve of his shirt and clipped it to his belt. "Just in case," he said. They sat in silence, the valley stretching endlessly around them, unchanged by their presence. At some point, Hannah noticed something on the ground nearby, a scrap of fabric half buried in the dust. White, familiar. Her heart leapt painfully. "Lucas," she said, pointing. He moved quickly, kneeling beside it. He lifted the fabric gently. It was the strip from the emergency blanket. "The one we tied to the car," Hannah whispered. Lucas nodded, though his face had gone pale. "Yes, but the car. I know." They stared at the fabric, at the way it had settled here, miles, somehow, from where it should have been. "That means we're close," Hannah said, grasping for logic. "We must be—" Lucas didn't respond. They followed the fabric trail instinctively, scanning the ground for more signs. Another strip appeared farther on. Then another. The pieces formed a rough line, uneven but deliberate, leading them toward a shallow ravine. Hope surged again, bright and painful. They moved faster, ignoring the heat, ignoring the dizziness. The ravine cut through the ground like a scar, shallow but wide. At the bottom, the air felt marginally cooler. And there, the car. Hannah's breath caught in her throat. It sat at an angle, half buried in sand, its tires sunk deeper than before. The antenna was bent. The doors were closed. "Lucas," she said, her voice breaking. He stood frozen for a moment, then rushed forward, pressing his hands against the hood. "It's warm," he said. "That means—" "It means we're not crazy," Hannah said. They circled the car slowly, taking it in as if it might vanish again if they moved too quickly. The fuel gauge was lower than before, much lower. The engine wouldn't turn over. Lucas tried again, and again. Nothing. Hannah sank to the ground beside the car, relief and despair colliding painfully inside her chest. "We found it," she said. "That counts." Lucas nodded, but his expression was unreadable. They took shelter in the car's shadow as the sun climbed higher. The shade was thin but precious. Hannah pressed her forehead against the cool metal of the door. "I keep thinking someone will come," she said. "Any minute now." Lucas said nothing. As the day wore on, Hannah drifted in and out of consciousness. When she woke, the light had shifted again. Lucas was standing a short distance away, staring out across the valley. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Listening," he said. "For what?" He shook his head. "I don't know." That evening, something else arrived. A sound, low, distant, almost imperceptible. Hannah sat up sharply. "Do you hear that?" Lucas turned. His eyes widened. "Yes." They stood, straining to listen. It came again, faint, rhythmic, like an engine. Hope surged violently, painfully. Lucas grabbed the emergency blanket, waving it above his head, the reflective surface catching the dying light. "Here," he shouted. "We're here." The sound grew louder, closer. Hannah's heart pounded so hard she felt dizzy. A shape appeared on the horizon, a dark speck moving steadily toward them. "Lucas," she whispered. "Someone's coming." He squeezed her hand tightly. The speck grew larger, resolving into a vehicle. Not a ranger truck. Not a helicopter. A pickup. It slowed as it approached, dust swirling around it. Hannah waved frantically, tears streaming down her face. The truck stopped a short distance away. A man stepped out, middle-aged, sun-worn. He wore a hat pulled low over his eyes. "You folks lost," he called. Hannah laughed, sobbed, nodded all at once. Yes, our car." The man glanced at the vehicle, then back at them. "You're a long way off the road," he said. Lucas stepped forward. "Can you call for help?" The man hesitated. "No service out here," he said, "but I can drive you to the main road." Relief washed over Hannah, so suddenly she nearly collapsed. "Thank you," she whispered. The man looked at them carefully, his gaze lingering a moment longer than necessary. "You didn't see anyone else out here, did you?" Lucas asked suddenly. The man frowned. "What do you mean?" "Just anyone," Lucas said. "Any cars, any people." The man shook his head slowly. "No." Something in his tone unsettled Hannah. They gathered what little they could carry. The man helped Hannah into the back seat of the truck. Lucas climbed in beside her. As the truck pulled away, Hannah looked back. The car sat alone in the ravine, half buried, already beginning to blend back into the landscape. The road the man drove wasn't marked on the map. It twisted to the valley in unfamiliar ways, cutting through land that felt untouched, untracked. "How long until the highway?" Hannah asked. The man didn't answer right away. "Soon," he said finally. Lucas exchanged a glance with her. The sky darkened as night approached, faster than expected. The truck's headlights cut narrow paths through the growing darkness. Hannah felt exhaustion settle deep into her bones. Her thoughts blurred again. She woke suddenly when the truck stopped. They were alone. No road, no lights, no signs. The man turned off the engine. "We're here," he said. Hannah frowned. "Here where?" The man opened his door. "The place people usually stop," he said quietly. Lucas tensed beside her. "What place?" he asked. The man didn't answer. He stepped out of the truck and walked a few paces away, disappearing into the darkness. Hannah's heart began to race. "Lucas," she whispered. The man did not return. Minutes passed, then longer. The truck sat silent, engine off, keys gone. The valley stretched endlessly around them, swallowing sound, swallowing light. For the first time, the thought settled fully, undeniably. Whatever rules they believed governed rescue, whatever logic promised that help arrived, those rules did not apply here. And somewhere beyond the darkness, the valley continued to hold its answers, untouched and unwilling to release them yet. Hannah woke to silence, so complete it felt artificial. For a moment, she thought she was still in the truck. The memory lingered, metal beneath her. Darkness pressed close, the sense that something was wrong but unnamed. Then she shifted, and illusion broke. She was on the ground. The sky above her was pale, already lightening with dawn. The stars were fading one by one, retreating without ceremony. The air was cool, almost gentle, a brief mercy before the heat returned. She sat up slowly. Lucas was beside her, propped on one elbow, blinking as if he didn't quite trust his eyes. "Where are we?" she asked. He looked around, then shook his head. "I don't know." There was no truck, no tire tracks, no footprints, no sign that anyone else had ever been there. Just open ground, flat and undisturbed, as if the night had erased itself. Hannah's breath came shallow. "We didn't walk here." Lucas stood, scanning the horizon. In the distance, low hills caught the early light, their edges softened by distance. No road, no ravine, no familiar markers. "We didn't walk," he said quietly. They gathered what little they still had, the flashlight, the empty water bottle, the emergency blanket folded thin and dusty now. The phone lay dark and lifeless in Hannah's pocket. As the sun rose, heat returned quickly, reclaiming the land with quiet authority. Hannah felt it settle into her shoulders, her scalp, her thoughts. They began walking again, not because they had a direction, but because standing still felt worse. After a while, Hannah noticed something on the ground ahead, an object that didn't belong. She stopped abruptly. "Lucas," she whispered. He followed her gaze. A shoe lay half buried in the dust. Not hers. Not his. Old. Cracked. The sole worn thin. They stood over it, neither reaching down to touch it. Someone else, Hannah said. Lucas nodded slowly. Someone who didn't make it back. They walked on, quieter now. Not far from the shoe, they found something else. A faded map. It was tore at the edges, sun-bleached, folded and unfolded so many times the creases had nearly erased the lines. Hannah recognized the markings immediately. It was the same map they had used. Her stomach dropped. That's impossible, she said. We still have ours. Lucas shook his head. We did. He reached into his pocket and froze. The map was gone. They stared at the one on the ground, at the faint pencil markings tracing a route that stopped abruptly, mid-line, unfinished. No, Hannah whispered. Lucas knelt, turning the map over carefully. On the back, written in faint, uneven letters, were words barely legible. Stay with the car. It moves when you don't. Hannah felt a cold rush spread through her chest. What does that mean? She asked. Lucas didn't answer. They continued walking until the sun climbed higher, the heat pressing harder. Hannah's steps grew uneven. Her thoughts felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. A faded map. It was tore at the edges, sun-bleached, folded and unfolded so many times the creases had nearly erased the lines. Hannah recognized the markings immediately. It was the same map they had used. Her stomach dropped. That's impossible, she said. We still have ours. Lucas shook his head. We did. He reached into his pocket and froze. The map was gone. They stared at the one on the ground, at the faint pencil markings tracing a route that stopped abruptly, mid-line, unfinished. No, Hannah whispered. Lucas knelt, turning the map over carefully. On the back, written in faint, uneven letters, were words barely legible. Stay with the car. It moves when you don't. Hannah felt a cold rush spread through her chest. What does that mean? She asked. Lucas didn't answer. They continued walking until the sun climbed higher, the heat pressing harder. Hannah's steps grew uneven. Her thoughts felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. She stumbled, catching herself just in time. Lucas steadied her. We'll rest, he said. They sat beneath the meager shade of a rock outcropping. Hannah pressed her back against the stone, feeling its warmth seep into her bones. I don't think anyone's coming, she said quietly. Lucas looked at her, really looked. For the first time, he didn't contradict her. I think, he said slowly, people come close. Close to what? To finding answers, he said, but not us. The words settled heavily. Later, how much later, Hannah couldn't tell, they found the remains of a campsite, or what might once have been one. Scattered debris, a rusted can, a fragment of fabric caught on a rock. Charred stones arranged in a rough circle, the ghost of fire long gone. This isn't new, Hannah said. Lucas shook his head. No, the valley wasn't empty. It was layered. They sat there as the afternoon dragged on, neither speaking. Hannah's vision blurred at the edges. She closed her eyes, just for a moment. When she opened them, the light had shifted again. Lucas was standing a few feet away, staring at something on the ground. What is it? She asked. He didn't answer immediately. He stepped aside. In the dust were footprints. 2 sets. One pair was hers. The other was his. They walked side by side for a few steps, then stopped. Only one set continued. Hannah's breath caught painfully. Lucas. He knelt, tracing the edge of the print with trembling fingers. They split, he said, but we didn't. Hannah looked around wildly. I didn't go anywhere without you. I know, he said. I didn't either. They stood there, staring at evidence that contradicted memory, logic, and each other. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows again. The valley reshaped itself, familiar and alien all at once. As dusk approached, Lucas sank to the ground, exhaustion finally overtaking him. Hannah, he said softly. Yes. If we don't, he stopped, searching for words. If we don't get out of this. She sat beside him, taking his hand. "We don't do that," she said. "Not yet." He nodded, though his grip tightened. Night fell quickly. The stars returned, sharp and bright. The valley cooled, but the cold brought no relief. Hannah lay awake, listening to Lucas breathe, counting each rise and fall of his chest. At some point, she realized she couldn't hear it anymore. "Lucas," she whispered. He stirred. "I'm here." Relief washed over her, so hard it left her dizzy. "I thought," she began. "I know," he said. They lay there, side by side, staring at the sky. Somewhere in the distance, a faint light flickered. Hannah sat up. "Do you see that?" Lucas followed her gaze. A small, steady glow, far away but unmistakable. A structure, or a vehicle, or something else entirely. Hope rose again, cautious but real. They stood, gathering what strength they had left, fixing their eyes on that distant point. "This is it," Hannah whispered. They began walking toward the light. Neither of them noticed that the footprint behind them did not change, that only one set followed, and that somewhere in the valley, the last clear version of what had happened was quietly preparing to surface, whether they were ready for it or not. The light did not grow closer. Hannah realized that slowly, painfully, as each step demanded more than the last. The glow stayed exactly where it was, unchanging, fixed against the dark horizon like a thought she couldn't quite finish. Her legs felt distant now, as if someone else were moving them. Her breath came shallow, scraping. Every sound seemed too loud. The crunch of gravel, the faint drag of her shoes, the pulse in her ears. "Lucas," she whispered. No answer. She stopped, heart hammering, turning back. "Lucas." The valley stood empty behind her. Not silent, just indifferent. Her chest tightened. She scanned the ground, the shadows, the darkness beyond. Nothing. No movement. No sound. No shape she could name. "Lucas," she said again, louder this time. Still nothing. Panic flared hot and sharp, then fizzled just as quickly, burned out by exhaustion. She pressed her hands against her thighs, steadying herself, forcing breath back into her lungs. "He's just behind me," she told herself. Just a few steps. She turned forward again. The light flickered once, then went out. Hannah sank to her knees. The ground felt strangely cool beneath her palms. She stared at them for a long moment, watching dust cling to her skin, noticing how detached she felt from the sensation. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. She thought of the motel room, the map on the dashboard, the way the valley had opened so calmly that morning, inviting without promise. She lay down, not because she wanted to sleep, but because standing no longer made sense. The sky above her was impossibly clear. Stars crowded it, indifferent witnesses. She picked one and focused on it, holding it in place as the rest of the world softened. "Lucas," she murmured, not expecting an answer now. Her thoughts slowed, stretched thin, then began to drift. They found her 6 days later. Search teams had been combing the valley for nearly a week by then, responding to a missing persons report filed when Hannah and Lucas never checked in at their next stop. Helicopters traced the land in wide, careful patterns. Ground teams followed roads that barely existed anymore, guided by experience more than maps. A ranger spotted her first. She lay on her side, knees drawn slightly inward, as if resting. No signs of struggle. No panic frozen into her features. Just stillness. They marked the location. Took photos. Logged coordinates. They did not find Lucas. Not that day. Not the next. Not ever. The official report was careful with its language. Exposure. Dehydration. Disorientation. Probable separation during attempted self-rescue. The car was found 2 miles away, half buried in a shallow ravine, exactly where it had last been logged by satellite imagery, days before Hannah's body was recovered. The engine was dead, the fuel tank nearly empty. Inside the car, investigators found a map, folded neatly, placed on the dashboard. On the back, written in uneven letters, "Stay with the car." No mention was made of the second line. No explanation was offered for the footprints that appeared and disappeared without pattern, or the emergency blanket strips found scattered miles apart, as if carried and placed deliberately. No record existed of a pickup truck matching the description Hannah had given in her final, fragmented voicemail, received hours after it was supposedly sent. And no one could explain why Lucas's footprints stopped so abruptly or why Hannah's continued alone. In the end, the case was closed. Death Valley claimed 2 more names, only 1 body. People said it was tragic, unfortunate, a reminder to respect the desert. But the valley didn't kill them quickly. It let them believe they were still choosing, still moving forward, still together. And when the truth finally arrived, it did so quietly, not as a revelation, but as an absence. Because the most unsettling part was not that Hannah and Lucas never made out. It was that, according to the valley, only one of them ever truly left the road, and the other simply stopped being found. Death Valley still looks the same. The roads are marked now. More signs, more warnings, more reminders that the land does not forgive hesitation. Tourists still stop for photos. Cars still pass through in long, careful lines. The valley accepts them all without comment. Hannah's name is listed among the missing and recovered. Lucas's remains are listed as not located. Search teams returned more than once. They followed the logic, the heat patterns, the satellite paths. They traced every reasonable route. Nothing led to Lucas. No clothing, no bones, no final trace. Just a set of footprints that ended where the ground should have remembered them. Rangers don't like to talk about the case. Not because it's unusual, but because it isn't. Death Valley has a way of doing this. Of letting people vanish not all at once, but in pieces. Of allowing certainty to erode before the body does. Maps still fail there. Signals still disappear. Distances still lie. And sometimes, very rarely, drivers report seeing a vehicle where no road exists, or a figure standing far out in the flats, unmoving, watching. They always look again. There is never anything there. Hannah and Lucas's story is told as a warning now. Stay with your car. Don't trust shortcuts. Don't believe movement means progress. But those who study the case closely notice something else. Every time Hannah tried to return to safety, the path closed. Every time Lucas moved forward, the ground opened, and the valley never corrected them. It simply allowed the separation. Because Death Valley doesn't need to trap you. It only needs you to keep walking. Long enough to believe you still have a choice. And long enough for the truth to arrive on its own.